very, very crude dewback.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's a little too long striding for
Right.
what we were thinking, but
All right.
Well,
Well,
getting
good.
there. And we like the way the Stormtrooper kind of gets thrown back and forth.
Yeah, no, I like that too.
yeah.
The stormtroopers, you know, in the pictures, they have these big long poles,
Right.
Yeah.
which one might assume are used to zap the thing on the head or something to make it do it.
This is our first time putting everything in the sequence since they did the first storyboards.
You know, let's go back and look at that again. Probably better if he was coming toward it.
Okay.
You know, if he was revealed just as that guy walks by. If you don't see him before, you don't see him before this guy, but as he's revealed, say, you know, about in there.
In here?
And he's a little further away, but he's sort of coming toward us.
Great.
So we got a couple of models here, and the deal with them is that they're not painted yet. So what we're trying to judge is make sure there's enough geometry here, but think about the fact that we're going to paint in additional details and little, milling lines and stuff like nicks and scrapes and dirt and stuff to make it look real.
These colors are only to differentiate the parts.
That looks good.
We also have a model that's been done of the large creature from Mos Eisley.
Okay.
Doesn't have a name yet, we realize.
Pronto?
Yeah, well, because it's retro. This is from a low camera angle. And it's a redo of the Brontosaurus topology from Jurassic, if you will.
Yeah.
So, wanted to show you here in a very rough stage because it's being designed online.
Yeah, no, it looks great.
Okay.
Fabulous.
And then we'll have what we call the Raptor Retro next week.
Okay.
Which is the Scurrier, which does have a name. So, somewhere along the line, I'd like to stop calling it a Bronto.
Pronto.
All right.
Call it a Pinto.
A large pinto.
Take the B off and call it a Ronto.
Okay.
When you build a droid,
It's
unless it's built for some kind of, this could be built for a special kind of purpose. I mean, I don't know, he's got big magnets on his feet, and he's designed to walk around the outside of spaceships or something, but naturally, when you were building a robot, if it's a terrestrial robot or something, it would be able to function fairly efficiently on.
Okay.
Right, yeah, there's a lot of excess motion in there but we figured we'd throw it at you just to...
They can't be too clumsy unless they're designed to actually be in a different environment from the one they're in.
Well, with Mos Eisley, that was really one of the original shots, besides the Jabba the Hutt scene, that brought me back to try to rework the movie and try to improve the special effects. Because there was a scene right when the speeder is going in, right before it gets to the bar, that the effects were very bad on it. There was a kind of a Vaseline blob that was under the speeder, and you couldn't see under the speeder, and it just looked terrible. It was one of the worst shots in the picture, and it really bugged me a great deal. And on top of that, Mos Eisley was supposed to be a city, and I never really was able to shoot more than a couple of streets. I had a very, very limited set in Jerba where I shot this, and a very little bit of time to shoot it in. And so I had just a couple of shots of streets. It was really the same shot used a couple different times. I always wanted Mos Eisley to be a big spaceport, and very exotic, and a lot going on.
If you look at the shots of Mos Eisley, the before shots, they have kind of a tranquil, people are just kind of moseying along, and they're just a few people every 100 feet. And it looks like, if it's a big city, it looks like the outskirts of a big city. But we've been able to put in enough things in there that it's really bustling and busy, and it looks like a real center of something. There's so much going on, and you can't really take it in the first time you see it. You have to look at it 2 or 3 times.
In the struggle to come up with a few jokes to make it allow us really to expand the sequence by 30 seconds or so, or whatever it is, I came up with a shot of a speeder bike running into a Ronto with a couple of Jawas on it. The Jawas falling off.
If we were to carry this idea where you had a Ronto, you had a stack of supplies on the back of it,
Right.
strapped on, and then you have the Jawa standing on top of the supplies,
Right.
sort of riding like
Right.
John Wayne would do.
Yeah.
And then the Ronto's harnessed, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And the Jawa's holding it, and maybe there would even be another Jawa riding on the back, depending on how elaborate you want to make this.
Right.
So he's riding it. The speeder comes in, veers off away, so it goes behind the Ronto. The Ronto is behind this car eventually. But when the speeder heads right toward it, because the guy on the speeder is not paying attention, or maybe it's the Jawas, I don't know who's at fault, but the Ronto rears back slightly on its rear leg, like a horse would. It bolts up. It goes whoop. And when it does that, the Jawa loses his balance.
Oh, no.
And then swings forward. He's holding onto the reins, so you end up with the Jawa sort of hanging in front of the Ronto, cursing at the speeder bike guy. It's cold. I can see that a couple of you just your eyes glazed over.
You're always looking for little bits of information or humor that move things along. You can't just have a shot sit there for its own sake, and you can have one shot, I say, that is beautiful. I say, "Ooh, isn't that nice?" But you only get one in a sequence, so then you have to move on, and the next shot really has to have a new piece of information in it. It can't be another angle of the same thing. It has to be something that has reveals something.
Look, Jabba, next time you want to talk to me, come see me yourself. Don't send one of these twerps.
Han, understand. I just can't afford to make exceptions. Where would I be if every pilot who smuggled for me dropped this consignment at the first sign of an Imperial starship? It's not good business.
Look, Jabba, even I get boarded sometimes.
Well, when I first shot the scene with Jabba the Hutt, I knew I was going to create some kind of stop-motion creature to be Jabba the Hutt. I didn't, at that point, have a creature designed. Phil Tippett and John Bird were working on the picture, and they were going to come up with an idea for a character for Jabba the Hutt. I had to have somebody, an actor, play the part, so Harrison had somebody to play against. So we just picked a big guy and put him in a fuzzy vest. I, at that point, felt that he may be a character somewhat like Chewbacca, big furry character. We shot that. As we were cutting the movie, realized relatively quickly that we didn't have the time or the money to actually shoot that scene, that ILM was pressed way beyond what it could pull off as it was. So I had to abandon that sequence pretty early on. I had to cut back on the special effects shots and that sort of thing because ILM just couldn't handle it. The scene with Greedo tells the same story point, which is Han is wanted by a bounty hunter. And that's his motivation for taking these guys on this trip. As I came up to the 20th anniversary, I was very keen to put Jabba the Hutt in. By that time on Jedi, we had redesigned Jabba the Hutt, and we had a better version of Jabba, so that I knew exactly what Jabba looked like and how I should fit in there. And with the digital technology, I had the power now, technologically speaking, to do it, to put him in and make it be the same Jabba the Hutt that was in Return of the Jedi.
I love that. It's great.
Good. So, because it's not over the top, eh?
No, you can't be over the top in this movie, please.
One of the things that happened when I changed from a big furry Jabba the Hutt to a big slug-like Jabba the Hutt is the new design for Jabba the Hutt that had this big long tail, and he was very slug-like. So when I went to shoot the scene, the original scene with Han, he turns and walks around Jabba the Hutt. When I put the slug-like Jabba the Hutt in there, it's obvious that Han would have to have walked over his tail in order to get to the other side. So I said to Steve and everybody, I thought what we should try to do is basically punch Han out, move him up, make it look like he's walking over his tail. And when he does that, obviously it'd be very funny if when he steps on Jabba's tail, Jabba reacts to that as if somebody had stepped on his tail. And so it's really something that grows out of the reality of it. I mean, you have Jabba, you have a Han walking around him. What would definitely happen is Han, in his character, would step on Jabba's tail, and it would hurt.
Standby alert. Death Star approaching. Estimated time to firing range, 15 minutes.
All wings report in.
And so they're in a constant roll.
Right.
The old Jedi technique that they picked up.
Okay.
That we just invented.
A number of years ago, George sat down and he told me about a vision he had about the virtual studio and how we could all work simultaneously together to be able to take advantage of time zones. And what happens is, because we usually shoot in Europe or around the world somewhere, what we like to do is I will film, let's say, in Africa. I will take the footage that I've shot that day, we will digitize it, and we transmit it via satellite to the ranch. And because there's an 8 or 10 hour time difference, during the time that I'm asleep, the editors get it, George takes a look at it, it's cut, and it's retransmitted back to me on location. I can look at it. If there are changes that they want made, I can reshoot those changes immediately instead of waiting for the rushes, in other words, the film to get back to London and process and sent back to us, which would take, in that particular case, 5 or 6 days. So this process of being able to communicate live in real time is really, I think, the advent of a new way to make films.
When I made the first film, Star Wars, not only were we making a movie, a very ambitious movie, but we were trying out technology that had never been done before, and especially in the space battle, where we were trying to get ships to fly against backgrounds, and we were using motion control cameras and things that just had never been done before. So part of what we were doing was a prototype of a new type of filmmaking, and part of it was telling the story. A lot of the storytelling had to be sacrificed because of the limitations of the technology that we had at that point, which was just brand new kind of prototype. We were inventing it as we were going. And the shots didn't have the kind of dynamics that I was hoping it would have. Most of the new shots that we've created are much more lively in terms of the dynamics of the shot. The ships are bigger in frame, they move further away or they come closer and over camera. Sometimes we pan with the ships, which you couldn't do before. There's a lot of new things that we're able to put in there that makes the shots much more exciting and much more sophisticated.
Okay, this is obviously just take one, first assembly on this. The idea here was to start by just literally combining the two previous shots.
So it was kind of a nice thing to be able to turn that from being the two shots into one longer shot that's sort of telling two stories. And you start looking at the fleet. Here's all the ships. There's the rebel moon that they're coming from. We follow them around. We say, okay, that's where they're going. They're going around Yavin to the Death Star.
For what it's worth, I've got the pilot got Luke's head kind of turning a little bit and then looking down to match the cut there.
That's great.
For what it's worth, if you can see it.
And I wanted to do a pilot figure that actually looked like the ones in the movie. You know, the pilot figures that are in the motion control models originally shot, those are sort of modified motorcycle helmets, and they don't really look like the ones in the show. So I carefully modeled one from that matched the ones that the actors are wearing. But then I needed actually a pilot figure. I needed a face in there. And coincidentally enough, a couple of years ago, I'd gotten a 3D scan of my head on a cyberware digitizer. So I thought it was entirely appropriate that I use my own head as the X-Wing pilot. So that's actually me as the pilot in fact, all of the ships in the show, because I just replicated that pilot figure for all the other ships.
The original shot to Cloud City was somewhat of a disappointment because there was never actually a real arrival. We see the Falcon in the clouds accompanied by cloud car escorts, and then immediately we cut to a landing. What George wanted to do in adding to the scene was to show more completely and dynamically the world of Cloud City and add to the anticipation of the Falcon's arrival. What you see here is a point of view from the Falcon following the cloud car, and then there's this beautiful shot of the Falcon as it moves through a dense set of buildings, all of which were created in CG. I think it's going to be a really great shot. This scene where Luke has been captured in the ice cave in Hoth was never really as suspenseful as George wanted it to be. In the original sequence, there were only a few shots that actually established the Wampa altogether. What we've been able to do is reshoot and add a few more shots in the cave that show what a vile, horrid, terrible, and vicious beast this creature really was.
Well, the Jabba Palace musical number, which is was in the film of Return of the Jedi, was always meant to be a large number. And when we shot it, we ran out of time shooting, and many of the creatures that we had that were going to be in that sequence weren't as mobile and weren't as articulate as we'd hoped. Therefore, the scene ended up getting truncated considerably down to a little tiny musical number. So it was one of those things that I'd always wanted to have this musical number in the film, and it just never got. It just didn't end up being a musical number. It ended up being a little, a couple of bars, and that was it. Before we had Cy Snoodles, and she wasn't very articulate. She couldn't move. Her lips wouldn't move, and her eyes didn't move. So now we've got a Cy Snoodles that actually moves around and is a real character. And we've added a Yuzum, Joe Yowza, who is a counterpoint musically to what she is doing, and in the process of changing the music to be a little more bluesy, a little bit more interesting as far as something that's musically more interesting than what we had in there before. I was able to add backup singers, more horn players, some drummers. And those kinds of things to make it much more lively and a bigger musical number.
We got extremely lucky with one of the dancers, Ula, And it turned out that her brother was a friend of ours and also had worked as an actor on Young Indy. And I told him about us reshooting the number, and he said, well, you know, my sister was in that. She played Ula, the dancer. And I said, oh my God. He said, well, you know, she hasn't changed, you know. She's in much better shape she was 20 years ago. You should call it. And it was really fun to kind of cut and paste her original performance with her new performance. On one side of the frame was shot 20 or 15 years ago, and then she moves through the frame and she will enter into a blue screen shot that we've just shot 2 weeks ago.